Greetings, fellow gamers. Next up on Man vs. Pixels, I've been playing The Outer Worlds. The Outer Worlds is a sci-fi RPG. It's made by Obsidian, who made Fallout New Vegas. Now, if you've heard anything about this game, you've probably heard it said that it is a spiritual successor to Fallout New Vegas. And after playing it for only like 10 or 15 minutes, you can definitely see that that's a valid comparison. It's got a lot of stuff that's similar to Fallout New Vegas, and all of it good. All of it that brings back good memories of playing that game if you played it. And if you didn't play it, well, it's a good game on its own. You won't have to worry about what it was like in the past. So let's get into it. The character creation starts as you're being revived from a period of suspended animation in a great big ship with thousands of other people who are also in suspended animation. You've basically been left in this colony ship by the corporation that sent you out because they didn't have the resources to revive you. And right at the beginning of the game, this mad scientist who becomes like one of the main characters throughout the game boards this ship and starts reviving a single person, and that person becomes you. So that is where your character creation starts. It's quite a deep character creation, as you'd expect from Obsidian and past sort of Fallout games, and sort of similar along the lines of Bethesda games. You can change a lot about your appearance. There's lots of sliders to change aspects of your facial appearance, and hair color, hairstyles, skin tones, scars, makeup, all of that good stuff. So you can get really deep into the character creation. You can easily spend an hour creating your character if you want something really specific, or you could just whack that randomize button a few times and see what it comes up with. Sometimes I like to do that, just whack the randomize button, see what you get, and then maybe tweak one of the randomized results. But either way, the actual character appearance is very good, very deep. And again, with the starting skills, you start off with skill points to spend. It's a decent skill system. You get skills, lots of like sort of skills, and then attributes which you don't get as many of, things like that. And you spend your skill points. You can look at them all. They descriptions are all really good. You can plan what kind of play style, what kind of character you intend to role play in this game. Or you can just go for the obviously good things like, our strength, or just intelligence. It depends what you want to do, but they're really well explained, and it's obvious what they'll do. So if you want to play a sneaky character, you know what you've got to invest in. If you want to play a strong melee weapon character, you can see what you've got to invest in. If you want to play a ranged character, etc., etc. So you can plan and choose accordingly. So once you've done that, the story starts. At the beginning of the story, you don't really know very much about what's going on. You sort of get the idea that the galaxy has been colonized by humankind, but not under the flags of any nations, more under the banner or the branding of corporations. And every sort of world or every sort of outpost has been claimed by a corporation, and the people living there are sort of loyal to that corporation rather than any particular nation. So you get revived and you get shot out of this colony ship to the planet below, and your adventure begins there. The quests are sort of split up in between sort of the main story quests and side quests. So there's a lot to be getting on with, but at the start you just sort of you're more following a trail of breadcrumbs just to get you going. Acts as more of an introduction.
Now try the rest.
The NPCs are really good. They've got good dialogue, and even if they're just bog standard NPCs, that aren't really integral to the story. They seem to have their own sort of personalities, and they're well voiced, and they come out with some weird lines sometimes, some quite funny stuff, because like I said, everyone's loyal to a particular corporation, depending on the corporation that has settled this particular area you're in. They're they come up with some like corporate slogans that they're contractually obliged to greet you with, and or advertising that they're contractually obliged to say to you. It's kind of like it creeps into sports broadcasting these days, I've noticed, especially American sports broadcasting, where the commentator has to say like, oh, this period or this half is brought to you by Bud Light, king of beers. They don't have to just say the product, they have to say like the slogan as well. So the NPCs in this game do that quite a lot too. It's a sort of very sort of corporate capitalist vibe with the humour. Yeah, it's quite good. Like I say, it's a very sci-fi game. The environments are absolutely gorgeous. The skyboxes are stunning. You can spend quite a bit of time just looking up at the sky, looking at how the colours change as the day-night cycle goes on. Really, really nice. A lot of effort's gone into the environment and the skyboxes. Very vibrant, very colourful, and very sci-fi looking as well. The world itself is not an open world. Each environment you go to, you kind of it's a self-contained environment, and you travel between them via either a transition, if it's like from the outside to a large inside area, or from sort of big environments you travel between them via your ship. You go up to your ship, and then your ship flies somewhere else and has to land at a specific landing pad, and then you get out, and then that environment is there for you to explore. Some of them are fairly large, but not massive. But there's a fair bit to find in them. There's there's settlements, bandit camps, all the usual monsters and marauders out in the wild for you to find, kill, and loot. And the loot is aplenty. There is loads of loot. Just about everything you kill will have some loot on it, and most of it useful. There's loads of consumables, absolutely tons of consumables. All of them do something, some sort of little buff. The good ones for your health, obviously, and then there's ones that will do just little attributes that just make you a bit better in a fight. So always worth keeping some consumables on you, and use them as well. Don't think, oh, I've got to hoard these for a hard fight or a boss fight. No, just chomp them, because there are plenty. They're everywhere. The weapons are quite good. There's a basic range of weapons, from pistols to rifles and shotguns, one and two-handed melee weapons, and then there's special science weapons, which, if you've invested skills in science, can be really, really devastating. They usually do some form of damage and then have some other kind of side effect. Like one pistol is like a classic looking ray gun, 1950s ray gun type pistol, and it shrank enemies as you shot them. It did damage over time and shrank them, and as they shrank they got weaker, and if they were human as well, it's funny, their voices would get higher. They'd start off all like big bandit marauder deep voice, and as they shrank them, they running towards you, they'd be saying like, I'm gonna kick your ass, and like in this like really high pitched voice. So that was quite a funny gun. So there's plenty of guns, a lot of stuff to buy as well. Vendors are well stocked with guns and ammo. Always worth looking at new vendors, and the same vendors again once you've leveled up a bit, because I believe that some of the vendors, their stock increased in level as you did. But yeah, always worth checking the vendors. Armor as well, weapons and armor, basic, just two sets of armor, a piece of body armor and a piece of head armor, headgear, helmet. You can go with stats or just basic armor rating or just looks. I found that with my character at least, and with some of the companions, I was going with looks. I was reluctant to get rid of a bit of what was now a very low level armor for obviously a much better piece of armor, but didn't really want to because it didn't look as good. um, the companions, I've mentioned the companions. As you go through the story, you collect companions along the way. Um, they're all very good. They all have their own personalities and their own sort of sets of skills. Some of them have skills that overlap, so you can sort of choose between them based on which ones you like better. I think you will get favourites. I certainly had my favourites based on not just their skills or the buffs they gave me for being in the party, but also their personalities. And they all have special abilities as well, special attacks, which you get to trigger when you want them. And they all have a little intro animation and a voice line, and some of those have different, same animation but different voice lines, and some of them can be quite funny to hear. It's not always the same thing over and over again. So you can have 6 companions in total, and you can have 2 of them out with you adventuring at any one time. And if you invest your skills into the leadership section, then your companions can be really, really powerful. That's the way I played. I played like a character that was like science and leadership based. I decided that at the beginning, and yeah, your companions can do a lot of damage and have a lot of health and really handle the combat well if you've invested the character skill points into leadership and equip them. You get to equip them as well, weapons and armor. Equip them with good weapons. Doesn't really matter what weapons you equip them with. They don't have like specific weapon skills. They have specific other skills. Like some might be lock picking, some might be sneaking, some might be science. But as for the weapons, you can give them whatever weapons or armor you like. So they're not restricted that much, and that was quite cool to be able to just give them anything, just what works. So yeah, the companions were good. I liked them. I definitely got attached to a couple of them. So the combat as a whole was really good. The shooting was fine. It wasn't like a skill-based like shooting, like the points you put into your ranged combat skill or your pistol skills and whatever have you. They kind of just affected your crit chance and your damage, not whether you hit or not. So unlike other sort of first-person RPGs where you could be pointing at something and shoot and not hit it because your skill isn't high enough and the bullet sort of goes somewhere else. This is like proper FPS shooting. If you're pointing at something, you'll hit it. It'll just depend on how much damage you do and what your crit chance will be, depending on the skill points you put into it. So yeah, you could do ranged with, like I said, various different ranged weapons, shotguns, rifles, pistols. You could do melee. There's 1- and 2-handed melee weapons and melee skill. You can do stealth, and a lot of combat can be avoided with dialogue options. I had quite high dialogue skills like persuade, intimidate, that sort of thing, and you can get around a lot of combat with those choices. If your skill's high enough, it'll come up in the conversation and you can avoid a fight if you want to. You don't have to, but if you've invested in those skills, it's good to see that there's the options there to use them, because a lot of times when you play an RPG and you invest in those sort of charisma based skills, sometimes you don't really feel that they've been useful, that they've done anything. But this, you do know when you've got out of a situation because of your skills, because of your intimidate or persuade skills. So that's good. Let's say each of your companions have a special ability on a fairly short cooldown, and you can use that quite often, and I suggest you doing it quite often. Don't save it, just use it. Use your companions' abilities. They're fun, and you won't get tired of them, I don't think, and they're always really useful. Most of them, 1 or 2 of the companions have abilities that aren't that great, but some of them have really cool ones. Let's say melee weapons come in 1- and 2-handed varieties. Armor comes in light, medium, and heavy varieties. Your character's not restricted to what he can wear, neither are your companions. Generally, the heavier the armor, like the higher the armor rating, but the lower the bonus stats on the armor will be. And the lighter the armor, obviously the lower the armor rating, but it'll have higher bonus stats to different abilities and such. So there's a balance there to think about, depending on what you get. It drops everywhere, so say you've got loads of loot dropping from enemies to just loose in the world, and loads to buy from vendors as well. The leveling comes at a good pace, I found. As always, you never had to wait too long. It didn't like drag even when you got up to sort of the higher skill levels. The leveling was paced pretty well. You get 10 skill points to spend every level, and a perk every other sort of few levels to choose from. There's a lot of skills to start with, and as you go on, you can develop these skills. If you're looking to get skills to like the maximum, they go from 0 to 100. You won't have enough skill points to do probably more than maybe 3 to 100. You definitely won't be able to get that many to 100, but especially if you want a more balanced character, I mean, you can definitely focus 1 or 2 to 100, but there's other things to spend on as well. Like every skill, as it goes up, every 20 points you put into it, you get a specific bonus or specific ability, and some of those skills you may not be investing in higher than that. There's just like the first 20 point ability is really good, like in engineering, for instance. When you get to 20 points in engineering, you get the ability to repair your gear anywhere instead of just at a workbench, and that's really useful. And if you're not playing like an engineering based character, it's still worth putting those 20 points so you can repair your gear anywhere, rather than having to go to a workbench and then go, spend your points on what you're concentrating on. And there's a few like that. There's a few that it's worth just getting that first 20 point threshold to get that first ability, which is really, really useful no matter what sort of character you're playing. So always worth looking at the other skills. Like even if you think, I'm not concentrating on a melee character, or I'm not concentrating on a science character, just look at the other skills, see what that first 20 point threshold is, and sort of think, is that going to be useful as an all-round skill to have. The perks, I say there's fewer of those, but you say you don't get as many perk points, and they're just usually flat out passive ability increases. Most of them are useful, some of them not so, and they will depend on what kind of character you're playing. Your companions, you don't get to allocate skill points, but they do get the same sort of perk system as you do. So every few levels they'll get a perk. Each one has got like a small, like 3, I think, of perks unique to that character. They're all pretty good. They all do something useful, or they confer a decent bonus to you. So always worth looking at thinking about your characters, companions, perks, and how they're going to affect you when they're in the party with you. There's a basic crafting system. You don't actually craft any gear, but you install modifications and upgrades. How good a modification and upgrade you can install depends on your skill. These mods are drops in the world or bought from vendors. You can tinker with your armor and weapons, and this is like, it's just improves it a slight amount, but you can do it as many times as you like. It costs an amount of money, and each time it costs a little bit more money. So it's a way of keeping like a low-level piece of gear up to date if you want to keep it. If it's got particularly good stats, or you just like the look of it, you can keep tinkering it up and up to keep pace with the sort of level you're currently at. But it does get expensive. If you can replace it with an actual piece of armor that is like base level higher, that's better, because then you can start tinkering with that, but back at the original starting cost. So it's a pretty good system to keep you up to date with a piece of armor you like, but you should always be looking to try and replace it with armor of more around your level. There is a durability system in the game, but it's not obnoxious. You never find yourself actually having to stop using a piece of weapon or armor because it's broken. Everything's really easy to keep repaired, especially, like I said, if you get that first 20 points in engineering and you can repair gear anywhere instead of at a workbench. It was never a problem for me. Never had anything break, or I think I even had anything get down to sort of like half durability or anything. It's just something in the game to, I guess, just as a way of using resources. But yeah, it wasn't a problem. So the overall story is really good, really well written story. The main quest line is excellent, really good characters, NPCs, and that along the way. Your companion quests, each companion has a quest line to do. They're all really good. Do the quest lines for all your companions before you finish the game. All well worth doing. All the other side quests are really cool. They're all for a reason. There's all stuff. Well, they're not just stupid like I'll go and kill this 20 of these fucking monsters or something. They're all like properly story written quests, and by the time you get to the end of the game, the time would have probably flown by. I know it did for me. Overall, I played 44 hours to complete the game with the main story and all the companion side quests and everything. And I when I looked and saw it was 44 hours, I was shocked. It had just flown by. I thought it was like half that. I thought, oh, this is a really short game when I finished it, and then I saw 44 hours. I thought, oh wow, that time has just flown by. Really, really enjoyed it. It's a great single player RPG by great single player RPG studio, and it hasn't been pissed over by a publisher. There isn't anything in there that doesn't need to be in there. There's no multiplayer or co-op that no one wants or uses. There's no microtransactions or loot boxes or any bullshit like that. It's just a proper single player RPG made by a proper single player RPG development team, and then it hasn't been shat over by executives or the publishers or anything like that. It's got a great setting, good characters, and I really enjoyed playing it. It's well worth the full price, which is $49.99 at the moment, as of this video, which is like 1st of March 2020. It's only on the Epic Store, so not on Steam. Even though I think it was advertised on Steam, but it's an Epic Store exclusive at the moment. Fine, just download the Epic Store and buy it. What's the big deal? $49.99, well worth it. Lots of content, and I hope they do more. I hope Obsidian keep going in this vein. So that was The Outer Worlds. Thanks for watching.